I joked I'd visit her every night. Then my older neighbor whispered, "Does age really matter?" The night I joked about visiting her every night, I did not expect it to change everything. I said it with a smile, like it was harmless. But the second the words left my mouth, the air between us shifted. It felt warm and dangerous, like standing too close to a fire and realizing too late that you might get burned. My name is Ryan Bennett. I am 26 years old. A few months before that night, I went through a breakup that did not look dramatic from the outside, but it left a deep crack inside me. My ex, Lily, said I was too steady, too predictable. She wanted passion that felt like a movie scene. She wanted chaos. I did not fight her. I did not beg. I let her walk away, and when she did, something in me grew quiet. I left Minneapolis soon after. I moved to Maple Grove, a calm suburb where the streets are lined with tall maple trees and the houses all look like they were built for families who like routine. In the fall, the leaves turn bright red and cover the sidewalks like fire. It is peaceful. It is safe. I told myself that was exactly what I needed. I rented a small wooden house on a quiet street. One bedroom, a front porch, a backyard that looked like it had not been touched in years. On the weekends, I painted the walls soft gray. I fixed the floorboards that squeaked. I trimmed the wild bushes. During the week, I worked at an architecture firm in the next town. I drafted house plans for couples who wanted something solid and dependable. I liked the work. It felt honest. My evenings were simple. I read novels. I watched old movies. I sat on my porch with a beer and listened to the crickets. I was not looking for love. I was not looking for anything that could shake me again. That lasted until I met Elena Morrison. The first time I saw her, she was across the street fighting with an old lawnmower. It kept coughing and stopping, like it was offended she even tried to start it. Her house was a small blue cottage with white curtains and a neat garden out front. It looked cared for, like someone had put time into it. She looked around 40, maybe a little older, but she carried herself with a quiet grace. Her brown hair was tied back in a loose ponytail. She wore jeans and a green sweater that looked soft from years of use. There was something about her eyes. They held sadness, but also warmth. I watched for a moment, then called out, asking if she needed help. She hesitated before nodding. I grabbed my toolbox and crossed the street. The mower only needed a clean spark plug. 10 minutes later, it roared to life. She stared at it, then at me, and smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one that reached her eyes. She insisted on thanking me with homemade lemonade. I followed her onto her porch. The glass was cold in my hand. The afternoon sun made everything look golden. She told me her name was Elena. She taught English literature at the local high school. I told her about my job and that I had just moved in. She welcomed me like she meant it. We talked longer than neighbors usually do on a first meeting. She mentioned she had recently separated from her husband after 20 years of marriage. No drama, no betrayal, just distance that grew too wide. The way she said it felt heavy but calm, like she had already cried enough about it. I mentioned my breakup too, but I kept it light. I did not repeat Lily's words. I did not want them to echo again. After that day, we started talking more. In the mornings, she would sit on her porch with coffee. I would wave. Sometimes she waved me over. We talked about books. She loved Jane Austen and Fitzgerald. I liked Hemingway and fast-moving thrillers. She teased me for always wanting action. I teased her for liking slow endings. She had a daughter named Sophie who lived in Chicago. She spoke about her with pride, but I could hear the loneliness under it. The house was too quiet now. Without planning to, I started telling Elena things I did not tell anyone else. I told her how Lily's words made me question myself. How I felt like being steady was somehow a flaw. Elena shook her head gently and told me steady was rare. That it meant dependable. That it meant strong. The shift happened on a bright Saturday afternoon. She came home with grocery bags stacked in her arms. I jogged over to help her carry them inside. We unpacked apples, bread, and a bottle of red wine. She laughed about buying too much food like she was still learning how to shop for one person. For a moment, she just stood there looking at me. The sunlight coming through the kitchen window hit her hair and made her look almost timeless. I smiled and said, without thinking, that if we were the same age, I would visit her every night. She froze. Her hand rested on a bag of apples. Her eyes locked on mine. The room went silent in a way that felt heavy. Then she asked softly, steady and calm, if age really mattered. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out fast enough. Through the open doorway, I saw Mrs. Turner from down the street walking her small dog. She glanced toward the house. Her eyes moved from Elena to me, curious and sharp. Elena noticed too. A faint smile touched her lips, but it did not reach her eyes. She told me I should step fully inside before the whole neighborhood started talking. I stepped further into her kitchen, and the door clicked shut behind me. That night, I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, replaying her question again and again. Does age really matter? It had started as a joke, but it did not feel like one anymore. And deep down, I knew I had just crossed a line I could never pretend I had not seen. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house felt too quiet, like it was waiting for something. I made coffee and stood by the front window, pretending I was just watching the sunrise. Really, I was watching her porch. Elena stepped outside a few minutes later. She wore a soft gray cardigan and held a white mug in both hands. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. When she saw me through my window, she smiled and lifted her mug slightly, like a quiet greeting meant only for me. I did not hesitate. I crossed the street. We sat on her porch swing the way we had many mornings before, but nothing felt the same. The space between us felt charged. Every small movement seemed louder. When her knee brushed mine, even for a second, my chest tightened. She asked if I finished the novel she had lent me. It was a story about two people who loved each other but were always mistimed. I told her I hated the ending. I said I was tired of stories where fear won. Elena looked at me carefully, like she was measuring my words. She said fear is not always weakness. Sometimes it is survival. I leaned forward and asked if she believed that. She did not answer right away. Instead, she studied my face like she was searching for something. Finally, she said that small towns remember everything. They hold on to stories like heirlooms. Once something is said, it does not disappear. I told her I did not care what people thought. She gave me a soft look that felt almost sad. She said maybe I could afford not to care. She said she was a teacher. Parents trusted her with their children. Reputation mattered more for her than for me. I asked her if she wanted me to stop coming over. The question felt sharp even as I said it. She shook her head slowly. No, she said she liked our mornings, she liked our talks, she just wanted me to understand that this was not simple. As I stood to leave, she reached out and lightly touched my arm. It was a small touch, but it held meaning. She told me she did not want awkwardness between us. I told her it did not feel awkward. It felt honest. Her lips parted like she was about to say more, but she stopped herself. Over the next few days, we tried to act normal. I fixed her porch light after a storm. She came over to give advice on the plants in my backyard. We talked about books and weather and work. But the air had changed. One afternoon, I left her house after helping her carry a heavy box from the attic. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, Mrs. Turner walked by with her dog. She slowed down, her eyes moving between Elena and me. She said we seemed friendly. I smiled politely and said we were neighbors. She made a quiet sound that did not feel friendly at all. It felt like judgment wrapped in sweetness. Then she walked on. That evening at work, it followed me there too. My coworker Jake leaned against the break room counter and asked who had me smiling at my phone all day. I told him it was nothing. He laughed and said small towns talk fast. He mentioned Elena by name. My stomach tightened. He said people were already whispering. He said it was bold. That word sat heavy in my chest. A few days later, Elena told me Mrs. Turner had stopped by her yard and asked if she needed help with all the work I was doing around her house. Elena laughed when she told me, but it sounded thin. She said she could see the story forming in Mrs. Turner's head. I asked again if she wanted me to back away. She said no. But she also said she needed me to understand what this could cost her. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me. fear of losing everything she had built. Then came the morning at the diner. We had decided to get breakfast together. It felt harmless at the time, just pancakes and coffee. We sat in a booth by the window. We talked. We laughed. At one point, her hand rested on mine for a second longer than usual. It felt simple. It felt right. I did not notice the phone pointed in our direction from across the room. 2 days later, Elena texted me late in the afternoon. She asked if I could come over that night. She said something happened at school. My heart dropped the second I read it. When she opened the door that evening, her eyes were red. She looked exhausted. She told me a parent had requested their child be moved out of her class. I asked why. She said they believed she was distracted, that she was not setting the right example. Then she told me about the photo. Someone had taken a picture of us at the diner. It had been shared in a staff group chat. Then it spread. Parents saw it. Students saw it. By lunch, whispers filled the halls. Mrs. Morrison is dating a younger man. Mrs. Morrison is having a crisis. Mrs. Morrison is desperate. Hearing those words made my blood burn. I told her she was not desperate. She laughed once, but it broke in the middle. She said it did not matter what she was. It mattered what it looked like. I asked what the principal said. She said the principal reminded her that she was a public figure in a small town, that her choices reflected on the school. I reached for her hand. It was trembling. I told her I could stop coming over. If that protected her, I would. The words felt like knives in my throat. She looked at me and asked if that would really stop the talk. If I disappeared, she said, people would just invent a worse story. She was right. In Maple Grove, silence does not erase gossip. It feeds it. The next day at work, Jake showed me the photo on his phone. He laughed like it was entertainment. I wanted to grab the phone and smash it. Instead, I walked away. When I went to Elena's house that evening, she was sitting at her kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her. She said the school board wanted to meet with her. Not officially a hearing, just a conversation. They wanted to talk about her judgment. The word made my jaw clench. She looked at me and said she was scared, not of loving me, of losing everything because she did. I moved closer and told her we could fight it, that it was none of their business. She asked what if it cost her job. I had no easy answer. The rain started that night, heavy against the windows. I went home, but I could not sleep. Near midnight, there was a knock on my door. Urgent, not gentle. When I opened it, Elena stood there, soaked from the rain. Her hair clung to her face. Her eyes were wide and full of emotion. She stepped inside without waiting. She said she could not breathe anymore under the whispers and stares. I told her if she wanted to stop, I would. She looked at me like I had broken something. She said that was not what she wanted. She said she did not want to lose me. She was just afraid. I took her hands. They were cold and shaking. I told her not to say goodbye, to say what she truly wanted. She stared at me for a long second. Then she said she wanted one real love, even if people hated it. She wanted to feel alive again. She wanted me. Something inside me opened wide. I pulled her close and kissed her, not careful, not hesitant. It felt like a storm breaking loose. When we finally pulled apart, she whispered that she would rather have one real day than years of pretending. I told her we would face whatever came next together. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, we stopped pretending. The next morning felt like walking toward a storm with my eyes open. I woke up before my alarm and stood by the window. Across the street, Elena's porch light was on. I could see her shadow moving inside, steady but slow. My chest felt tight, not with regret, but with the weight of what we had chosen. When I walked over, she opened the door before I knocked. She wore jeans and a cream sweater. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. Her eyes looked tired, but there was something stronger there too. Not fear, resolve. I asked her if she was sure about going out together. She nodded and said she was done hiding. We walked to the diner side by side. The air was cold and sharp. The maple trees were nearly bare now, their red leaves scattered across the sidewalks like pieces of fire. When we pushed open the diner door, the bell above it rang louder than usual. Heads turned. Conversation slowed. I saw Mrs. Turner in a booth near the center of the room. She was sitting with two other women. Her mouth tightened the second she saw us. Near the counter, two of Elena's students were eating fries and whispering. My throat went dry. Elena's hand tightened around mine. She lifted her chin and kept walking. We took the booth by the window, the same one from the photo. The waitress approached us with menus. She hesitated for a second before forcing a bright smile. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes," Elena said calmly. We ordered pancakes. I could feel eyes on us from every direction. Every laugh in the room felt pointed. Every whisper felt sharp. One of the students glanced over and giggled. My jaw clenched. I started to turn toward them, ready to say something I would probably regret. Elena touched my wrist gently and told me not to. She said we were staying. So we stayed. We talked about the book she was reading. We talked about a new design project at my firm. We laughed at something small and ordinary. Slowly, the tension in my shoulders loosened. It did not disappear, but it stopped controlling me. When we stood to leave, the room went quiet again. Elena slipped her hand into mine without hesitation. We walked out at our normal pace, not rushed, not hiding. Once outside, she exhaled slowly. She admitted she thought she might get sick walking in there. I asked her how she felt now. She said she could breathe. 2 days later, the school board called her in. She told me she wanted to face them alone, not because she was ashamed of me, but because she did not want the focus to shift from her voice to my age. I hated the idea of sitting outside while she defended something that belonged to both of us, but I respected her. I waited in my car across the street from the school building. The windows were dark. The parking lot felt too quiet. When Elena finally walked out, her steps were slow. I got out of the car immediately. Her face looked worn down, like she had been holding herself upright for hours. I asked what happened. She told me they asked if she understood how it looked. They asked if she was thinking clearly. They asked if she was risking her career for a mistake. The word mistake made my hands curl into fists. I asked her what she said. She looked straight at me and told me she said she was an adult woman who had lived a full life. She said her marriage ended because it was empty, not because she needed attention. She said I was not a problem in her life. I was someone she cared about. She told them her private life was not their lesson plan. Hearing that filled my chest with pride so strong it almost hurt. The board decided to take no action for now. They told her to be mindful of community standards. Community standards. The phrase felt small and cold. That weekend, her daughter Sophie came to visit from Chicago. Elena warned me Sophie would have questions. She was right. Sophie hugged her mother first, long and tight. Then she turned to me with sharp eyes. She asked why her mom was smiling again. She wanted to know if I was serious. I did not look away. I told her that being with Elena made me want to be better, not louder, not reckless. Better. I said I was not here for attention. I was here because I cared about her mother. Sophie studied me for a long moment. Then she said she would still be watching me. I told her that was fair. That night, we ate dinner together in Elena's kitchen. Simple pasta and salad. The mood was careful at first, but it softened. Sophie teased her mom about finally having a mysterious neighbor boyfriend. The word boyfriend sounded strange and real at the same time. Later that night, I overheard Sophie telling Elena that I seemed good for her. She told her not to let anyone steal her happiness again. Over the next few weeks, the whispers did not disappear, but they changed. They became background noise instead of a constant attack. People got bored. Mrs. Turner stayed distant for a while. Then one afternoon, she surprised me. I was taking out the trash when she stopped by the fence. She asked if I was serious about Elena. I said yes. She studied me carefully, then nodded once. It was not warm, but it was not cruel. It felt like a quiet acknowledgement. One evening, Elena and I sat on her porch swing as the sky turned purple. The air smelled like cold grass and smoke from fireplaces. She rested her head on my shoulder and asked if I ever thought about the future. She said when I was 30, she would be 44. When I was 50, she would be 64. She did not want me to wake up one day and feel trapped. I admitted I had thought about it, but I also told her that before her I had felt half asleep, safe but numb. Now I felt awake, not reckless, not wild, alive. I said I did not want a love that looked right to strangers. I wanted a love that felt right to us. Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. She reminded me that she had asked if age really mattered. I kissed her forehead gently and told her it did not. Not when it was her. She held my face and said no more hiding. I promised her no more pretending. For the first time since my breakup, I did not feel like I was missing something. I felt like I had found it. And I knew whatever came next, we would face it side by side. Winter came to Maple Grove slowly, like the town needed time to decide whether it was ready to change. The maple trees stood bare now, their branches dark against pale skies. Snow dusted the rooftops and softened the sharp lines of the houses. From the outside, everything looked peaceful again, but inside our world, things were still shifting. Elena and I stopped sneaking glances. We stopped lowering our voices when we were outside. If we were walking together, we walked together. If we were laughing, we laughed. Some people still stared. Some still whispered. But fewer than before. The truth was simple. Once we stopped acting like we were doing something wrong, the story lost its power. The real test came in early January. The school board called Elena in again. This time, it was about a formal review. Not because of new complaints, but because the district wanted clarity. They wanted to protect their image. Elena told me she was tired of defending something that should not need defense. The night before the meeting, we sat at her kitchen table. Snow fell softly outside the window. The room felt warm, but her hands were cold in mine. She said she was not afraid of losing the job. She was afraid of losing her dignity. I told her she had not done anything wrong. She nodded, but I could see the weight she carried. Teaching was not just work for her. It was purpose. It was identity. The next day, I did not sit in the car. I walked her to the front doors of the school. Students were walking in for afternoon activities. A few paused when they saw us. I did not let go of her hand. She squeezed mine before stepping inside alone. This time, I did not feel helpless waiting. I felt certain. When she came out an hour later, her face was calm. She told me the district decided there would be no disciplinary action. They reminded her to maintain professional boundaries at work, but they admitted her personal life was her own. The storm had finally lost its force. On the walk home, Elena was quiet, not shaken, just thoughtful. She said something inside her had shifted. For years, she had lived carefully. She had chosen safe words, safe routines, safe expectations. Her marriage had been steady, but empty. Her life had been respectable, but quiet. She told me loving me felt risky, but living without feeling anything felt worse. That night we made dinner together. No tension, no fear, just music playing softly in the background, and snow piling against the windows. At one point, she stopped stirring the sauce and looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten. She said she had spent months worrying about what might happen. Then she asked me what I wanted long-term. Not next week. Not next month. Long-term. The question was not light. It was not romantic in the simple way. It was real. I told her I wanted mornings with her. I wanted shared coffee and shared silence. I wanted arguments about books and late-night talks about nothing. I wanted a life that felt steady and alive at the same time. I told her I did not see her as a chapter. I saw her as the story. Her eyes filled, but she did not look afraid. She stepped closer and placed her hands on my chest, like she was checking if my heart was steady. She said she did not need promises about forever. She just needed honesty. I told her I was not playing with her life. I was choosing it. Spring arrived faster than winter had. The town moved on to new gossip. A new couple. A new rumor. A new distraction. Mrs. Turner surprised us one afternoon by bringing over a small pie. She said it was too much for her to eat alone. It was her version of peace. Sophie visited again in March. She hugged her mother with relief instead of concern. She told Elena she looked lighter. Later that evening, Sophie pulled me aside and said she could see the difference in her mom. She said if I ever hurt her, she would never forgive me. I told her I understood. One warm evening, Elena and I sat on the porch swing watching the sunset turn the sky soft pink and gold. The air smelled like fresh grass. She rested her head on my shoulder and asked if I remembered the night I made that joke in her kitchen. I laughed and said I remembered how my heart almost stopped when she asked if age really mattered. She smiled and said she had been scared that night. Not of me. Of wanting me. I told her I had been scared too. Scared that I would ruin something good. Scared that the world would be louder than what we felt. She lifted her head and looked at me. She said age does matter in some ways. It changes seasons, it changes bodies, it changes timelines. But it does not change how a person makes you feel. She told me what mattered was respect, choice, intention. We had all three. I took her hand and told her I had never felt more certain about anything. Not because it was easy, but because we had walked through something hard and stayed. The porch light above us flickered on as the sun disappeared. Across the street, kids rode their bikes. Neighbors watered their lawns. Life looked ordinary again. But for me, it was not. It was fuller. I thought about the version of myself who moved here after the breakup. The one who believed steady meant boring. The one who thought peace meant hiding from risk. I realized I had been wrong. Love was not about chaos or age or other people's approval. It was about choosing someone, again and again, even when it was uncomfortable. Elena squeezed my fingers and smiled into the quiet evening. I had joked that I would visit her every night. Now I did not need to joke. I walked across the street because I wanted to. And every time she looked at me like that, I knew one thing for sure. Age had never been the real question. Courage was.